Well, hello there, humans to be earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and if you're lucky enough to be doing it too. I'm Bushka on Blitz. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, well, aren't you in for a treat? Settle down for a cornucopia of tanking illumination as we have a squiz at the T34 and 2, T34-2. T34-2, this is the bistro, please. Your steak and chips is ready. Come on down, the price is right. Well, in my opinion, the price is a little bit wrong. And I'm going to break down exactly why. I have a few issues with this tank. Why I don't particularly love it that much. Why I can understand how some people do like it. How you play it, all that kind of thing. And what it does well and what it does really badly. And what it does really badly is the stuff that I like a lot. So there you go. I want to set the scene first, though. Now, Tier 7 in medium terms is the rush tier, the raw DPM tier. You have tanks at tier 7 that have a like 10% higher DPM number than a lot of the tanks at tier 8. Mediums too, like that's just how it goes. And, oh God, this tank's gun. And that's just how it's always been. And then you get to tier 8 and mediums, and there's a few tanks that really still shine DPM wise because they have such high penetration numbers and they have such good gun depression, like the Centurion 1. So for the most part, their DPM is actually very high in terms of effective DPM, real DPM. The ability to pull shots off from anywhere. Like if a Centurion 1 was where I am here, he would have had 6 shots so far with gun depression, a solid turret, accuracy, and penetration. So when you get to tier 8, not only do your DPM numbers drop across the board for mediums, it's just how it is, and that's fine because there are other ways to be successful, but you come up against just a stupidly large amount of exceptionally well-armored heavy tanks. Like the turret on that T-34, for instance, like the whole IS series of tanks, the IS-5, which has like 220 millimeters of pen required all over the front, the IS-3 Defender, which has 193 everywhere all over the front pike and spaced armor down the sides. Your Glacial's very strong frontally and with turrets. Even, you know, your heavy tanks, like your medium tanks, like your 54 Proto and your bloody Type 59 and your Super Pershing and the IS-2SH and the IS-3 itself. And it's just insane, right? There's so much armor floating around at this tier. And it's such a heavy dominated tier. If anyone's driven heavy tanks in tournaments at tier 8, you'd know it's kind of the most mind-numbing tournament playstyle too at times, because you'll turn up and there'll be 8 IS-5s on the other team. And you're like, oh God, here we go again. So not only does the DPM go down at tier 8 for most mediums, but the quality of the opposition that you've got to penetrate goes right up. This is where I think the weaknesses of the T-34 and 2 are exacerbated. And that's why I wanted to set the scene, because the T-34 and 2 struggles with DPM against tanks that are already set down the chain DPM-wise. And it's one of the reasons why if you have a little bit of knowledge against this tank, you can do some very, very nasty things to it. What do I mean by that? Well, there's like 16 medium tanks at tier 8. The lowest DPM tank of all tier 8 mediums is the T-34 and 2. It's also got the equal lowest penetration, apart from the Type 69, which is an autoloader which has 173 millimeters of pen on its AP. 34 and 2 has 175. So its penetration numbers aren't good either. The worst DPM outside of this is the Type 69, which has 8% more DPM. There are tanks at this tier that have 35% more DPM than you do. Geez, I mean, the AMX CDC has 38% more DPM than you. That's 40% more DPM than you. And people tell you DPM is an overrated stat, and that's fair enough if you have other things to make up for it. And the only thing this tank has going for it, if you're running it with the 122mm gun, which is why you'd run this line. If you're not running the 122mm gun, you should just be running the Russian medium line, because this tank is not even as good as a T-44 or something like that. You could just run that 280 Alpha 100mm gun on any of the Russian mediums on the Type 59 or something, and you'd be apples. But if you're running that 122mm gun, all you're getting that's different from everyone else is 400 Alpha. Now that is different, but it's no bigger than the alpha dose of any of these heavy tanks like the IS-6 and all that kind of thing. So you'd think there'd be something special about it. But they all have penetration. Way more penetration than you do. Way more penetration than you do, right? And they don't give up a whole lot for a 400 alpha gun because they're a heavy tank. They have armor, they have reasonable mobility, and every once in a while in a situation like this, you'll have those lovely moments where your 400 alpha gun really, really helps. But to get that 400 alpha gun, you're giving up DPM. Your DPM is just so freaking bad. It's an absolute joke. Like, I'm not kidding. Your DPM is so bad, it's an embarrassment, okay? I'll give you a quick example of this. If you go down to tier 7 and you open up, say, the Panther 1. The Panther 1 has 2,590 DPM with a 198mm penetration 75mm gun. You have 1,781 DPM. I keep harping on about this because once you get pushed on in this tank, DPM becomes super important. And if you're not getting pushed on in this tank, then something is wrong with the enemy, because every single tank in your game has more damage output than you. Every tank. A T-34 has 300 more DPM, bigger hit point pool, gun depression, strong turret, like super strong turret. And this gun will drive you mad if you don't fire AP, and you've got to fire AP because your damage is so low. Then you're firing heat, and heat is not the most reliable. Like, at least they could have given this tank APCR, and it would have been more reliable. Now, these are the tanks you're seeing. Now, every once in a while, you run into an RU-251 or a Borsig or something like that, and you'll look like a god because you've had 120mm HE shells, and that's great. And the other skill that's excellent for this tank is the new light tank skill that actually allows you to, the precision fire skill, which allows you to fire 3 shots and then get a 4th shot with a 1 in 3 chance, basically, of being a full roll. So you can really use that much more effectively than other tanks because your alpha is so high. You can see I've lined up and I switched to AP, so there's a chance I can clear this guy with 1 shot if I get a good roll. So here we go, waiting, 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 waiting. There you go, 467. There's not another medium at your tier that's going to do that. Maybe a T-34 and 3, of course. Not many people have those anyway. So you're giving up all that DPM, but what do you get back for it? You get a 400 alpha shell. That's it. You've got horrible accuracy. Your gun is the least accurate medium gun in its tier, 0.389. You've got the worst gun in its tier. Horrible penetration. Your gun is one of the worst penetration guns in its tier. Horrible. Absolutely crap gun depression. 5 degrees of gun depression. Your gun is one of the worst gun depression guns in its tier. Like the T-44-100 has 5 degrees. The T-54 first prototype has 5 degrees. Everyone else, way more gun depression than you. In fact, Tier 8 is a tier where most tanks have good gun depression. AMX CDC, the Indian Panzer, the Centurion Mark 1, the Pershing, the Super Pershing, the Type 69, the 047, the bloody Panther MIT 8.8, the Panther 2, the FCM 50T, they've all got either 8, 9, or most of them 10 degrees of gun depression. Even the bad ones, like the 44 has 7 degrees of gun depression. The Panther 1 has 6 degrees of gun depression. That's a tier 7 medium that I told you about before with 2,600 DPM. Like, the Type 59 has 7 degrees of gun depression. So you're giving all that up. And what do you get back? Well, not a whole lot. And if it sounds like I'm being overly negative, I think because it's an overly negative situation to have a tank with such limited numbers across so many parts of the board. Now, admittedly, the turret is strong enough. That's fine. It's a good medium turret. That's great. But it's just not reliable, right? The T-34 and 1 at the tier before it has... I don't understand why the T-34 and 1 in the tier before it has 100mm at a tier where not many tier 7 tanks have access to a 100mm gun. So look at that IS-6. I mean, this is torture. You have to try and hit the top of the... Or you go to heat. And you might pen the front of that IS-6, you might not. But look at the reload. The IS-6 will bloody well just about reload before I do. I mean, he will. He's got more DPM than me. He will reload before I do. You've got a 13.5 second reload. I mean, you can't... The whole theory behind these Chinese mediums is you trade with heavies, right? You can trade with heavies. Just drive a heavy. Just drive one of these big, reasonably mobile Russian-style heavies for a boring gameplay style. But you've got the same... Like, the IS-5's gun is bad dispersion-wise, but it's like the same dispersion you have here. Okay? Your aim time's better. Big, look at that. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to try and hit that IS-6 again. Get out of town. And if you're going to trade with heavies, there has to be something going for it. So the 34-1 has 280 alpha, which is special at its tier, right? It's special. It also has good DPM, enough that it can compete with its peers. I don't understand why Wargaming thought that giving this thing enough DPM... I mean, look at this. It's just so frustrating. You go to heat, but why do you have to go to heat when you've... If you go to heat with this gun, because you're penning an IS-6, you'll do 1,514 damage a minute. 1,514 damage per minute. To kill that IS-6, you will have to hit every single shot you fire for 60 seconds. Not miss any, an average roll, every single one of them, and you'll kill the IS-6 in 60 seconds. 60. The Centurion 1 can do it in like 30. 35. I mean, there's just... It would not be so bad if they had this tank at a tier where... Look at the enemy. There are 5 heavies there. Like... That Tiger 2 is like the lightest armored heavy I can find just about. There's a Lerva and a Tiger 2. If they're angling up at me with my 175mm of penetration on my 400 alpha shell that fires every 13.5 seconds, I'd be a chance. And you may have good games in this tank. I do not deny that you may have good games. But look at this. That's AP into the flat sides. But that's okay because you won't see many IS-5s or Defenders in the game. Or IS-3s. Or IS-6s. There's not many of them at tier 8. I mean, is there? It's alright. I'll aim up really hard this time. So that's 2 bounces on flat surfaces for this bloke. Let's have another one. Yeah. That's 3 shells. That's 30 seconds worth nearly of aiming up and firing for no damage. And that's RNGesus. But when you're putting all your hopes and dreams into one shell. Like, look at that IS-5. Just get wrecked. It's great you find an AMX 1375. You're loving life. IS-3 rather. That's not even an IS-5. That's an IS-3. It's not even as strong frontally armor-wise as an IS-5 is. Look at the gun depression. I can't get the gun down far enough to actually get a decent shot on this bloke. It just gives up so much, and it's a bad tank right now. And you can have good games in it. I'm not saying you can't have good games in it, but they require the enemy to be very, very bad. And they require matchmaking to be absolutely perfect for you. Because your armor profile isn't good enough to trade with heavies when your DPM and your penetration numbers are so low that they can be super aggressive at you and there's not much you can do about it. Every single tank that you see has better damage per minute numbers than you. I mean, look how careful I am about making sure I shoot this IS-3 in the arse. If you want to drive a tank with a high ceiling and a gun that doesn't have a lot of pen, drive a T-49. It's the same kind of deal, but at least then you can splash with high explosive. You can use big HE bombs and you'll get some kind of return on your investment. With this thing, you are literally just wasting your time. You would be better in nearly every other tank in the game that you can get a hold of at tier 8 than driving this thing. I mean, you can see I'm going to go all the way around, loop back around, come up underneath him and have a crack. This is the T-34-2, and the reason this review took so long to get to you is because it's a pretty crap tank. Good aim time. Bad gun depression. We got to bounce. Go hull down, hold your nose, and wonder why you're playing the tank. Stop the line at tier 7. T-34-1 is amazing. It's amazing. It is an amazing tank. It's a brilliant tank. It's everything you want in this line. From tier 8 onwards, you're just looking disappointment square in the mouth. And it is the same at all the tanks. Tier 9 is better than the tier 10, I think, which is saying something because the tier 9 has like the worst gun depression you've ever seen. Hello, IS-3 Defender. I finally got a penetrating shot. So there you go. It's a 34 and 2. I'm bad at it. Someone else will be good at it. But geez, I don't know how. It really, really frustrates me. That was 3,000 damage in one of the most onerous damaging games I've ever had to do. Look after yourselves, guys. Stay safe on the battlefield. And until next time, bye for now.